Good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you for joining me today for another family engagement short. I'm Mara Grzanek, the family engagement coordinator at Stevenson. And today we're going to talk about how can we help our students stay organized. We are about, as we've talked about this week, we're about 2/3 into our semester, or the way into our semester. And now is a really good time for us to check in with our students and think about, to kind of talk about where are you in the learning process, where are you in meeting the goals of your learning goals, your learning targets, which ones have you demonstrated proficiency in, which ones do you still need to demonstrate proficiency in, and then to kind of have a conversation about how are you managing your learning, not you, the adult, the teen. Just ask the teen, how are they managing their learning? What are they doing? Because remember, what we're doing is we are working on building skills and strategies for our teens to take with themselves as they move on past Stevenson and into some kind of post-secondary education environment. So sort of that idea of, okay, I get that we're supposed to be like organizing folders or whatever, but can't we just, if our students have a system that's sort of working for them, or they seem to be okay, isn't that all right? Well, it's yes, but maybe not, because teenagers can be so disorganized and overwhelmed. And so sometimes having some kind of guidance or some support around how organized are you can be really, really helpful. And what's most important is that they have a system that works for them, but that they can consistently do it. You know, it's not something that works for them today, but maybe something else works tomorrow. It's something that they can consistently rely on, where they're organized and they're sort of, they don't have to do everything, lockstep, but that things are done that are systematic, that they can do for themselves over and over again, because those organization skills are going to be helpful for them when they're more independent. And as they move along in their educational journey, having those kinds of things like planners or tools or timers or a specific way you set up your space can be helpful, because then it's something that they can rely on as they move forward. So what are you in this process? You are sort of the organization mentor, so to speak. So you are the person that works collaboratively with your team and helps them think about what can they do to be successful, no matter what it is. If your team cannot find a pencil today, but has a strategy where they can find a pencil in the next 5 days, then that's a small success, and you have to recognize it and celebrate it and remember that this is a process. No matter what you do with your team, no matter what we do with our teens, whether it's organizing for learning or anything else, remember they're learning. It's a system. It's going to fall apart. What you design idealistically may not be what actually becomes what's useful and what they work with. But to talk to your teen about what are you doing, and not like redesigning everything all at once, but just sort of say, hey, what's working for you? Where could you use a little help? That's really helpful for them. Sometimes teens need everything broken down, from like when the teacher says, this is what's due, or when you look at Canvas, what's due, to handing it in. Sometimes teens need help all along the way. Sometimes teens just need to be able to say to you, the adult, hey, look, I know we all study in one central area and I need dedicated space to put my stuff. I get that this is a central area, but can I find, one place to put all my stuff? Because remember, we talk a lot about the fact that teenage brains are still developing. They develop from the back to the front. And this front part, the cerebral cortex, is the organization part. And that's what's developing last during adolescence, right now, when your teen is working on it. So that's what is going to be what's falling apart, unfortunately. So you're going to have to be the mentor in that you keep with them on this all the time and sort of keep being that neutral and positive support for them while you move along. So some things to consider. What do you need to do? Our teens, for the most part, are in class the whole day, right? So they're scheduled. They have everything scheduled for them. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I apologize for that. So when they're on their independent time outside of school, they're going to be trying to find time with friends. They're going to try to find time with free time. They're going to try to find time for co-curriculars. And so sometimes what to do is to sit down with your teen now that they've had about 12 weeks into school and say, hey, how are you spending your time? What are you doing with your time? Map out their time. If they spend all their time in free time, great. How do you map out your time? What do you do with your time? And then say, how much time do you think you need for studying? How and where can you find that time? Let them make the decision about where they can find their time. Make sure that you find time for sleep and you book in time for any kind of, like eating, if that's a family, if you do that as a family or whatever is central to your family, or work time or whatever, and then sit down as a collaborative unit and say, hey, where can you find time to study? How much time do you need? So they have some sense of time management. They have some sense of how, and it may not be the same time every day. It may be 5 o'clock on Tuesday and 4 o'clock on Wednesday and 7 o'clock on Thursday, and depending on what their schedule is in terms of co-curriculars and responsibilities at home and work responsibilities. So the first thing is to sit down and talk about time management. How are you dividing your time? And what are you doing with that time? And remember, as the adults, we're the mentors. We are just neutral, asking open-ended questions and letting our teens reflect and plan, knowing that the plan is probably going to fall apart, right? Knowing it's probably, and then we're going to have to revisit that plan. So it's not like, hey, I talked to you about that on Sunday. It's Thursday. Why are you doing it? Rather, what's working for you, what's not working for you, how can we modify things and get them to work for you, right? Second, are they organized? Do they have either a space to work, or if it's in a common area? When my kids were in high school, we all studied around the dining room table at the same time. I found something to read, they worked. Well, it was more when they were in junior high, but anyway, and in high school a little bit, they liked that central time, but it's the dining room table. So what had to happen was we had to have a container where all the stuff went that they used to study. So is there like a bag or a basket, or preferably not their backpack, because the backpack, then everything gets shoved in it. But if you can find a way to have a couple pencils or pens, or maybe some cords for their laptops or whatever, that stay in a centralized place, then they have a little bit better organization, and they know that, hey, when everything's in one place, it works better for me. Then is there that place to study? Some kids like to study in if they have a bedroom on their own, they like to have their own space to study. Some like to be in the middle of the room where everybody is. But then you have to think about, is the TV going? Are there conversations? What kind of environment is it to help your teen study, right? To help your teen get the work done. So first is, are they managing their time well? Do they have an organization plan? Like, are they organized with their materials, right? It's really good now because a lot of things are digital. But do they have how are they managing their time? How are they organizing things? When they're at home, are they organized with materials they might need to study, like pencils, papers, those kinds of things? And then where are they studying? What kind of environment are they studying in? And is that conducive to your teen's study? The next thing is, Where can you get help from school? Well, there's two places. You can look on Canvas, and if your student is not sharing what they're doing on Canvas with you, then you should ask them to help you be an observer on their Canvas page. They do that through Canvas. They send you a link. And if you are not part of the interactive report card, I highly suggest you do that. Because in Canvas, you will see what is going on in class every day, right? What are the units they're working on? What's the homework? Along the right-hand side of Canvas says the homework for the class that's coming up. It also talks about what content they're working on, right? So what is the units, like the materials? So if you know that, you can have that conversation with your student. And in the interactive report card, you will see how they're scoring. How well are they meeting the goals that they're the standards? Are they showing and demonstrating knowledge in the standards? This is a really good time to sit down with your team and say, hey, let's look at how well you're doing. The other thing that you can see in the interactive report card is at the bottom of all the standards, you can see all the everything that's been handed in, and you can see if there's any missing assignments. So you can see the assignments and the scores on them. You can also see if there's any missing assignments, and you can have a conversation with your team about why are those assignments missing and what's your strategy to hand them in. Remember, this is a process that we're working on with our teens of being more organized and identifying what do they need themselves to be organized. Do they have good time management? Have they organized their materials? Do they have a space to study that's conducive to their kind of studying? And then where can they find outside help to help them with their studying? That's through Canvas, that's a classroom page, and the interactive report card to make sure that they've handed everything in. And if they believe they've handed it in, and if it's been scored, and if there's discrepancy between that, help them email the teacher. Not you don't email it, help them email the teacher and say, hey, I think I handed these things in. Can you double check and make sure I handed them in? Or if they're not, hey, I didn't hand this in, and is there a way I can still hand it in for credit? Lastly, I want to just do a quick shout out to you about your student services team. Every student at Stevenson for the 4 years that they're here has a counselor, social worker, psychologist, and dean that work together to support your student. If you find that your student is really having a hard time being organized or getting work done and on time, or contacting teachers, or things that you can't help them with that are beyond your ability to help, or you're like, gee, I just don't know how I would do this. Completely understandable, completely understandable. That's what your counselor is there for. So reach out to the counselor and say, hey, my student is having a problem with this. We talked about this and I'm not quite sure how best to handle them. Or I think this is beyond, we've done these things together and it just doesn't seem to be working. Can you step in? How can you help with this? Please feel free and really reach out to your counselor for that kind of support, because they're there for you to help you. I want to thank you very much for joining me today to talk about how to get organized when we can't find a pencil. And I want to invite you to join me again tomorrow as we talk about strategies for learning. How do we help our students? This whole week has been about learning strategies and sort of what can we do, knowing that we're 2/3 of the way through the semester. Tomorrow we're going to talk about learning strategies again at noon. I want to thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope that this has helped you with some of your questions about supporting your student, and I hope you have a great day. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.